Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to, once again, yet another episode of dun, 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 dun,
The
the Nuanced Naturopaths. Oh, no.
technical difficulties episode.
Yeah, a little bit. But
I
that's okay
disappear
because you're
again?
recording on Descript so we can edit it in post. But I didn't hear what you said. So I can't
Okay.
reply. Oh, no.
I said that you said the Nuanced Naturopaths, and then I said technical difficulties episode.
Oh, wow, that's perfect. That's exactly what's happening. Anyway, we'll get stuck in and we'll see how it unfolds. So today we are trying something a little bit different, not just on the technical front, but in terms of the actual episode, we're going to discuss a topic that we have, I guess, heard a lot about lately. I've got to say my world isn't like fully saturated with it, but the periphery of my world, I can tell that there's lots of hubbub and buzz around this particular supplement. And I would say, let me know if you agree, Julie, I would say that this is a supplement that neither of us really rely on frequently, if at all. But everyone's talking about it, so we want to talk about it in a nuanced way, and we'll kind of be going through information that's new to us. We're kind of like unpacking it with you.
Yeah. I have been asked, so I will only, make any recommendations when asked, and I have been asked a lot lately. And simultaneously have been reading things that are, both negative and positive. And so I think that's what started this conversation, wasn't it? So what is the deal?
What's the deal with creatine? Oh yeah, that's what we're talking about today, creatine. Didn't even announce it.
Creatine. And specifically creatine supplementation.
Rather than, because it is something we can get from our diets naturally, predominantly from meat. So we will talk about the nuance of if you're vegetarian or vegan and what that could mean for you. And actually, come to think of it, the only direct question I had, it was I had one patient in the US whose doctor mentioned it to her, and she just asked me, she's like, do you think this is something that could benefit me? And I was like, off the top of my head, no, it's not really a necessity, but let's look at your goals and let me look into it a bit, and we'll go from there. But otherwise, not many people have been asking me directly about it, but I just know that this is one of the supplements that people are going crazy for at the moment. It's probably the supplement that's getting more popular on Amazon and iHerb and health food stores as we speak.
I was just going to say, which always, rings alarm bells for me. It's like, oh, do we have to order from overseas?
Yeah.
Because then you don't even know what you're getting.
Yeah, the quality it's so questionable. And it also makes me go, okay, what glamorized headline from one scientific study came out in the last month or so that's sort of doing the rounds and is being regurgitated, or is it a matter of there's really high quality data coming out about creatine, and it's getting people more excited about it, rightfully so, potentially. Let's unpack what's actually going on here. And I was going to suggest perhaps let's start off really simply, and I've got a great paragraph here. We're using lots of resources and references today. They'll be linked in the show notes. But let's just start off with what creatine is, if you're happy for me to take that away, and we can go from there.
Oh, please, that'd be great.
I've got some etymology. Is that the right word? So creatine comes from the Greek word kreos, which is with a KR, and creatine we know is spelt with a CR, meaning meat. And it's a molecule that's produced in the body from certain amino acids. Amino acids come from protein, and the amino acids that make up creatine include arginine, glycine, and methionine. It's mainly made in the liver, to a lesser extent in the kidneys and pancreas. Creatine stores high energy phosphate groups in the form of phosphocreatine. These can help be part of the process of generating ATP, which is a form of cellular energy currency, let's call it. Creatine's role in energy production is particularly relevant under conditions of high energy demand, such as intense physical or mental activity. And I think that'll be a nice inroad into one of the things we were talking about at the start, before we started recording, that this was always creatine in my mind. We both have worked at health food stores. Creatine in my head was always just like a gym bro supplement. It was for bodybuilders, it was for athletes. I never considered it in terms of like the average customer walking in. It was always a specialty thing. And I'll say even from years ago, you know, thinking about 2017, 2018, people who came into the health food store, they already knew they wanted creatine, if that makes sense. We didn't have to sell it to them. They came in knowing that that's what they wanted. But we're learning that it could have many beneficial applications for other demographics beyond the bros, beyond the gym junkies.
Yes. And most recently, it's been very highly recommended for midlife women, so women during perimenopause and menopause. Interestingly, the demand for creatine in women's bodies is much higher than it is in men's bodies. So that's interesting as well.
Oh, and I've just got that stat to back that up. I've just got that statistic there that women naturally have 70 to 80% lower creatine stores than men. And immediately, and again, we don't have all the answers in this one. There's going to be lots of answers and information, rest assured, but because we like to explore nuance and theory, we don't have any confirmed theories, just floating thoughts. But my first thought there is there a biological evolutionary reason for women naturally having lower stores?
Probably. Because I just don't, I don't think the body does anything
it's not for no reason. Like, our bodies are so intelligent, and there's years and years of evolution and forged in fire DNA that sort of decides to do these tasks and activities, usually for good reason.
Perhaps it is something to do with the, sort of down-regulation of metabolism in general, and even lower calorific needs. Perhaps there's that's I know that it's driven by it's directly regulated by estrogen. So as estrogen falls, it changes the regulation of creatine synthesis. So I wonder whether that's just part of, eating less. We need less creatine as well.
Yeah, right, interesting.
I don't know.
Okay. Shall we sort of like get into it? We've opened up what is creatine. Well, perhaps let's look at some of the main benefits, the purported benefits of creatine, and then go into some myths. How does that sound?
Yeah, it sounds like a good thing to do.
Cool. So I think it's worth acknowledging that this is something that is generally well studied. There are lots of different studies on creatine, but obviously, those studies vary in quality, how many participants were tested on. But based on the majority of the data that we have access to, the primary benefit is that it improves strength and power output during resistance exercise, resistance training, with some specific research tested in older adults, like beyond just the general population. So that's interesting because I know we will be weaving in a bit of perimenopausal nuance there. Creatine can increase lean muscle mass. In trained athletes, it's been reported to reduce body fat and improve some measures of anaerobic exercise performance, improving running capacity. Interesting. So creatine has been far less researched for cognitive performance, but what's in my brain is that that's the thing that it's sort of gaining some popularity for now. But it may also have benefits in those contexts. Creatine appears to reduce mental fatigue in some cases, particularly in high-stress participants where sleep deprivation or exhaustive exercise is involved. It may also improve memory, particularly, here we go, particularly for people with below average creatine levels, such as older adults. Okay, there we go. And
And so, sorry to interrupt, when it comes to brain fog, low mood, and just sort of cognitive decline in perimenopause, that is a really disturbing symptom in perimenopause, it could at least be partly creatine deficiency, just hiding in plain sight.
And if I could add some, again, just theoretical, a really potential simple explanation, because, there's been a couple of references to older demographics. Is it as simple as, how when people age, their appetite tends to change a fair bit? I usually see it going down, obviously case dependent. But is it also that as certain parameters change that are relevant to aging, does our capacity to digest and absorb protein, thereby absorbing amino acids that are used to create creatine, does that capacity reduce over time as we age? And does that partially explain it?
It could do. I know that the production of hydrochloric acid and just gastric secretions in general declines. Now, I kind of, in the back of my mind, I'm questioning how accurate, what was the source of that data, because so much research is done on people that's maybe not looking at their diet specifically, and as people age, they tend to both lose some of the sense of smell and sense of taste, and also don't cook for themselves as well. The tea and toast diet. So, how much was that factored into the
True,
research?
really good points. And on that, the taste and loss of smell bit, my brain also goes, how much of that is a potential zinc deficiency, which would also be compounded by reduced hydrochloric acid production and efficiency, which then is detrimental to the digestion of proteins. Of zinc being found concentrated in, usually high protein foods.
Yeah, so it's not just a chicken and egg; it's which.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Okay, interesting. So that's a little intro. So I think we've busted the myth there, actually, straight off the bat, that creatine is just for building muscle. We now know there are other benefits. Yeah. It's maybe a bit more important than we thought. Would you like to take us into myth 2?
Myth 2 is that your body creates enough creatine on its own. And it does. It does. If you're eating a diet that is rich in creatine-rich foods, so mostly meats, but also assuming you've got good quality hydrochloric acid to break it down and good digestion. But then also when you reach perimenopause or getting closer to menopause and your estrogen drops, that rate limiting step in the production of creatine is estrogen. Once it falls away, then you're going to be producing less creatine of your own.
And that's actually, that's so interesting to me that, so your body can make enough creatine on its own until estrogen drops. That, naturally, I think, before we get to the menopausal stage, I'm like, how is that changing creatine availability just throughout the menstrual cycle at different points in the menstrual cycle where estrogen is naturally lower. What does it mean for people with amenorrhea who actually don't have a menstrual cycle and don't have sufficient enough estrogen levels? Oh, that's so interesting to me that it is directly... So the process that creates creatine is directly regulated by estrogen. As estrogen falls, the pathway just dysregulates. So, I'm so eager to dive into that more, but I don't think we can have the answer in this episode.
No, but I do have a question that might be related, and I think this is one that you might know the answer to, is when estrogen drops during the menstrual cycle, is there a greater or a lesser desire for protein sources, and I guess specifically meat, or is there a time in the cycle that you're aware of where women are more likely to be craving meat?
Okay, yeah, that's a really good point. So actually, the time in the cycle where estrogen is lowest is during menstruation, during the bleeding phase. We also get a drop of estrogen, case dependent, but we also get a drop of estrogen right after ovulation, because it reaches its peak, and that peak usually can't sustain itself, and we don't want it to. So there's a peak at ovulation, and then it falls, but then there's a little bit of a mini peak sort of later in the premenstrual phase. But yeah, estrogen is pretty low during menstruation, typically. Now, for a lot of women, that's also the time in the cycle where they would be craving meat the most. I have some patients that specifically only eat meat around menstruation, or just before, or just after. So yeah, that's really interesting. But then also thinking about menstruation as a time that I would encourage as a lower activity time, a more deeply restful time. We're not pushing ourselves. If you are an athlete, I wouldn't be encouraging you to, go for personal bests and go for exhaustive exercise, right? So is there something related there in terms of energy that's needed for the muscles, and that a reduced need in muscular energy, and even frontal lobe activity? Now that I think about it, but that might be too much of a rabbit hole, because that was the thing. We know that the frontal lobe also uses creatine to govern mood and executive function, memory, decision making, and menstruation, interestingly, is a time that where there's a bit of a change to consciousness, and I think this is why so many women struggle to function, is because they're trying to meet external standards, they're trying to meet the obligations and the societal demands that they've been meeting successfully in the rest of their menstrual cycle, and then they get to menstruation and they're just like, oh my god, why do I can't have a conversation, I can't function how I normally do. So is that where the estrogen drop, creatine dysregulated, maybe body demonstrating, we don't need as much of this thing at the moment, and we need to conserve resources, so we're not going to focus on that pathway? All just theoretical thoughts.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to take it one step further into the sort of the woo-woo energetic side. Is, we have this declining cognitive function that comes in at perimenopause, and what you're describing during the menstrual cycle. Is it because and perimenopause being a psychological a brain rewiring, a downloading of a new operating system? Is this a time when the body is actually trying to say, maybe don't interact at the same level as you have done, just for a while, just to accommodate this new transition, into the next stage? Yes, conserve energy, pull back, I don't know. And is creatine a part of that, or is the decline of creatine a part of that?
Yeah, I mean, I love that we landed there just from a conversation on creatine, and I wouldn't be surprised that, I mean, there's definitely got to be a link, and even I'm sure you see a lot of women who really notice their bodies changing at around that time, like in the perimenopausal years leading up to menopause, where they might find it easier to gain weight. They might notice they're losing more muscle, especially if they have been really active and keeping muscle. So the body is really signaling that something's changing and it needs to change. Yeah, it's fascinating.
A metamorphosis of it really is, and it's a time when a lot of women experience this sort of invisibility. I'm not being seen anymore. And I saw a classic quote. My favourite artist, Ani DeFranco, said, so you're becoming invisible to what? The male gaze as a sexual object? What's the problem? But that's an aside. But it is, isn't it? It's a metamorphosis, and it's a changing of who you are. And I suppose on a smaller scale, the menstrual cycle is doing that. In a shorter cycle.
Yeah, more frequently. And I guess also off the back of our conversation around menopausal hormone therapy, is it just like, okay, so we know that, creatine is sort of down-regulated during these low estrogen times, and we know that's, in menopause, so let's just give the body more creatine. Like, similar to the hormone replacement therapies, it's like, our body's lowering hormones at this time, so we just, give the body more of those hormones, and then, voila, the symptoms that we're concerned about disappear or improve. I think it's a worthwhile question to ask, that, is that what our body needs or is asking for during these really specific times where it's trying to down-regulate something?
Is it doing it for a reason?
Yep.
and rather than trying to fix a problem that isn't there, should we try and understand why the body is doing that and lean into it? And the other reason that women are taking creatine in perimenopause is for muscle build, maintaining muscle mass, and so in conjunction with resistance training, it can offset some of the sarcopenia that happens with older age. And I can see that as being helpful. But then do we just do the resistance training and eat food? And that's actually,
and that's a great point. And that's actually what I was going to say. I was going to say, but what if we just get our foundations right, like how we're moving, how we're eating? Do we really need supplementation? And again, this is where we have to go on a case-by-case basis. Maybe in a person who struggled with estrogen levels their whole life, who maybe had a naturally lower baseline level of estrogen, and who spent long periods of time as a vegetarian or a vegan or is actively not eating meat, maybe that's a really nice scenario, and they've got healthy kidney function, which we'll get to the nuance of that. Maybe that's a scenario where we go, okay, here's your case. You are experiencing memory loss, brain fog, easier to fatigue, losing muscle mass at a pretty significant rate. Yes, maybe creatine paired with the right lifestyle and diet, it is a worthwhile consideration. Let's go into myth number 3.
Myth number 3. This is one that I had come across on Instagram, and it really intrigued me. that supplementing creatine switches off your own production, and it's basically via a negative feedback loop. We have an enzyme called AGAT, and AGAT is then reduced by creatine supplementation. This reduction in the AGAT enzyme means that you're then not producing your own creatine at the same level. So, you know, is the net benefit more creatine? And of course, when you stop supplementing, then that reverts back to normal. So the Instagram post was saying that it doesn't, but I've had a bit of a dive into the research, and the research says in humans it does return to normal. But it's a moot point, isn't it? If you're supplementing with creatine in order to get your levels up, but your own endogenous production goes down. Yeah. So
interesting, and it's very nuanced there in terms of, my gosh, I mean, I'm sure there's so many genes that would be affecting how that enzyme is functioning in the first place, you know, regardless of creatine supplementation. And then there would be the dosage, you know, at what dose does it start to be suppressed? Does that pathway start to be suppressed? And then how quickly does that pathway start to be activated again when you stop supplementing? But then also, do we have enough data on what this is actually doing in women's bodies who already have this kind of natural, you know, estrogen-dependent down-regulation of creatine production?
Yeah, you raise very good points there. The first one is, you know, you mentioned the genes. You know, so 60% of all SAMe production is used in making creatine. So if somebody has an MTHFR polymorphism, then that is likely going to play a part in this. A creatine is a good backup for methyls if you're, say, low in B12, or you've got one of these MTHFR variants. But if you're low in SAMe, then you're not going to be producing as much creatine anyway. And then you supplement it. Is it going to come up because you're going to be, you know, reducing this AGAT enzyme anyway? So, you know, there are lots of questions again about the individual, like if they have naturally low B12. If they are vegetarian or vegan and therefore have less B12 in their diet, if they have a genetic polymorphism like the MTHFR variants, then, you know, they're all going to be implicated as well. And I'm sorry, I forgot your other points now because I got so caught up in that one. No, that's fine. No, and I think that's a good rabbit hole to dive into a little bit more because, you know, there's a lot of terms that you mentioned there that we know how sort of like interconnected they are, but I feel like there's a lot to break down. So we've got this process of methylation, we've got SAMe, we've got homocysteine, we've got MTHFR, and I feel like it would be good and worthwhile to, you know, go as slow as we need and weave these concepts together because it is something that's clinically relevant and it is something that comes up a fair bit in practice. Yeah, so I think a lot of people could relate to this. Yeah, yep, that's a very good point. I did throw out a lot of terms there. And I do remember, just to touch back on one of the other points that you said, is that, you know, how well has it been studied in women in supplementation over a long period of time, and that data's not there. It's really thin. So back to the terminology. So
Well, I think because the genes and the SAMe and the B12 and the homocysteine, it all kind of relates to this methylation cycle. How simply can we break down methylation?
Okay. Well, we need methyl groups for almost every cellular process. And some people have altered genetics that produce more or less of these methyl groups. And in some cases, environmental exposures can also compromise the production of those things, which means that we have less or more of the byproducts, which is the SAMe and the homocysteine. And we require B group vitamins, in particular B12, for this methylation cycle to operate properly.
Yeah.
And they can be impacted by dietary factors or poor absorption or gut issues.
And so B vitamins are important for this methylation cycle, especially B12, folate, not folic acid, which is an important differentiation, B6, and then different amino acids, because they're methyl donors and they contribute to the functioning of this methylation cycle. The byproducts, I think that's the word you use, the byproducts of this cycle are SAMe, which is S-adenosyl methionine, I believe, and homocysteine. And there's this sort of dance between creatine and homocysteine. When people have that certain genetic variation on that MTHFR gene, if I can simplify it that much, creatine, supplementing with creatine can lower homocysteine. Now, I guess it's important to note we want to keep homocysteine nice and regulated. When methylation isn't working properly, homocysteine levels can build up and accumulate, and we know that there is an association there with certain cardiovascular risks when homocysteine is elevated. Yeah. So that's a good benefit in terms of creatine supplementation in certain individuals with these genetic variants can reduce homocysteine. Yeah. People with these other genotypes, homocysteine can increase with creatine supplementation. Still within a normal range according to the research, but then we also know that like our range for where we're comfortable seeing homocysteine levels for a patient is probably slightly lower than conventional ranges where they're happy to see homocysteine sitting.
You know, the difficulty here is that we're always translating the research into sort of functional terms. You know, how does that relate to the way that we view the processes as naturopaths, rather than often the research is focusing on our drug therapy, and so their lens is different to ours.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I think that the methylation conversation is important because that's something that we can assess in individuals, and it's something that, you know, a lot of the problems with the gym junkie bro science kind of rabbit holes that people can get into is that they're not acknowledging this level of nuance. They're not really formulating specific treatment plans for, say, you know, personal training clients. If supplements are being recommended, they're not individualizing it based on things like this. But especially when it comes to men and cardiovascular health, that's something that you really don't want to mess around with, and that's a conversation that I just don't think is being had enough in the sports nutrition world, and certainly in health food stores or sports supplement outlets. So, yeah, again, it's not a blanket prescription that if...
It's just focusing on the gains,
Yes.
isn't it? They're just, what do you want to achieve? But it's not individualized.
Not at all.
One size fits all.
Yeah, it's never one size fits all. Rarely helps. And I also just want to throw in there, because again, yes, we broke down all those different terms, but to put it into like a relatable picture, and feel free to throw in your experiences here with patients and like symptom pictures. But I would be on alert if someone, in terms of someone having methylation issues and maybe some signs that homocysteine is accumulating and there's not enough methyl groups that are able to be used in this methylation cycle. Sometimes how that can present is with, issues with chronic fatigue, brain fog, histamine related issues, whether that's in the form of, frank allergies or lots of food intolerances or nausea, or it's easy to get headaches or the allergy kind of symptoms like, sinusitis or runny nose, or just lots of mucus and phlegm accumulating, itchy rashes.
But also gut issues, loose stool, spontaneous loose stool and sort of urgency as well can come into that.
Is there anything else that you see clinically in terms of, what people might be able to relate to that reflects that something's going on in methylation to you?
Well, if anybody relates a story of, say, multiple pregnancy loss, clotting issues, cardiovascular issues in the family, that's usually where it comes out is actually in the sort of family history discussion. And
let's move on to the last myth. So thanks for indulging us in that rabbit hole. So the last myth being creatine is completely clean and safe, no concerns at all. And I mean, God, that's got to be a myth for almost all supplements, because there's always going to be some degree of nuance that it's, there's always some kind of circumstance where it may not be safe, So, yeah, you were telling me a little bit about this before we started recording, so I'd love for you to jump in and because I think this is a word that a lot of people won't be expecting to be associated with creatine supplementation.
Well, I wasn't expecting it, so this was news to me, and it's a bit scary. So the formaldehyde is a byproduct of creatine. So it's partially metabolized into methylamine, which is then converted to formaldehyde via the SSAO enzyme pathway. And so the fact that it's producing formaldehyde is concerning. And if somebody was taking high dose creatine, it's a lot of formaldehyde. But a research study 2005 found that high dose creatine, so it's 21 grams a day for 14 days, so that's very high dose, increased formaldehyde excretion by 4.5 fold, and methylamine by 9.2 fold. Now, if you were somebody that had healthy kidney function, hearing that it was excreted is great, because that's what you want. You want your kidneys, their elimination pathway, you want them to get rid of those things. But then, as we were discussing before, the question is, what about people that don't have healthy kidney function? Because kidney function is a bit, it's a bit scary, because you can lose up to 90% of kidney function and have no symptoms. So something like this is concerning. You don't want formaldehyde building up in your body.
So be aware if there's any, I would say, again, one of those family history cases, if there's even a family history of kidney issues, just be really cautious. And I want to put that dosage range in practical terms, so one of the resources that I always harp on about, and I love the quality of information that they put out to the public, is examine.com. And they sort of just have good evidence-based guides on different supplements, nutrients, foods, anything that has a health claim attached to it, essentially. And the most commonly studied supplementation protocol of creatine involves an initial loading dose, which is 0.3 grams of creatine per kilogram of body weight per day, usually divided into 4 equal doses throughout the day. To put it into perspective, for an 82 kilogram person, let's say, which I think is a range that a lot of like young men would fall into, that equals a loading dose of 25 grams per day. So that's for up to 7 days, and then they change to a maintenance dose, which is much lower at 0.03 grams per kilo of body weight. So that dosage in the study that you found, 21 grams a day, that's actually quite realistic if people are following that loading dose protocol. But the fact that it was for 14 days, that's the part that's sort of less realistic, that if we are going evidence-based, we would never have someone on that dose of creatine for that long. It would be 7 days max at that loading dose that could be getting into the 20 to 30 gram range.
Yeah, but the concerning thing is that, particularly in this sort of gym bro, and not all gym bros, I suppose, but there is a concern that a lot of people that are self-prescribing things think more is better, more gains, more creatine, more gains, right?
Yep.
Or they're not getting guidance at all. So they may not be even measuring out the dosage. So it's concerning.
I just want to shout out a couple of gym bros, I guess, because I'm just thinking, oh God, there's such a high range of such a big range in terms of quality, in terms of personal trainers, exercise physiologists, but anyone, even just online men's health gurus or coaches who guide men or anyone through any kind of exercise program that involves any degree of supplementation, right, or dietary advice. It's such a huge range. And I just want to say that a couple of people who I think are really beautifully evidence-based and really responsible is James Smith. He runs the James Smith Academy, and Lucas Aoun of Boost Your Biology. I mean, we mostly talk about women's health, but in case there are any men listening, although I found it even helpful just to, especially Boost Your Biology, he breaks down a lot of the evidence available behind a lot of popular supplements that we're talking about in this context. So just want to throw those couple of resources out there in case anyone's wondering, and in case there's any men, or honestly even mothers with sons who find their sons are maybe having self-esteem issues or body image issues, and they're going through that phase of like, oh yeah, I'm going to start going to the gym, and there's a lot of gym bros on TikTok and Instagram and online sharing lots of dodgy things. So yeah, just some resources there for your sons or yourselves.
Fabulous.
Yes.
Fabulous. So does this bring us to, so what does the research actually support? So there's strong evidence that muscle strength and lean mass in postmenopausal women combined with resistance training is beneficial, combined with creatine. There's good evidence that brain creatine restoration and cognitive reaction time improvements, particularly if there's a deficit of creatine in the body, so that's supported. There's some emerging and promising evidence of mood support, sleep quality, particularly in perimenopausal women, and also in lipid profiles, so cholesterol, fat metabolism. Then there's some mixed evidence of bone density, so not sure about that. And it's generally understudied in terms of long-term supplementation, in terms of the formaldehyde accumulation, in terms of interaction with things like MHRT.
Yeah.
And then with the MTHFR, it's not really studied in terms of manipulating homocysteine levels using creatine. But that would be interesting line of study to look at.
Yeah. Yep.
And so the naturopathic takeaway, I think it's a conversation that needs to be had more often about, just the whole supplementation of things in high dose, long term,
across the board, like
across the board, yeah. And I should say, this is something that an answer I gave to one of my patients the other day when we were talking about creatine, is that there are so many different ingredients, amino acids, herbs, vitamins, minerals. There's so many of them that can be beneficial for all of these things. It's not creatine on its own. There are alternatives.
Yes, yeah.
As well. So that's important to know. But to say that creatine is completely safe to take it is very reductionist. That it's just for athletes is missing the biochemical reality that women have lower natural creatine stores. That we need to individualise it. Yeah. According to MTHFR status, dietary intake, whether somebody is vegan or vegetarian, their B12, their gut health. Maybe we might consider co-supplementing with methylation cofactors like the B vitamins. And then there's the whole folate, folinic, and foods that are fortified. I'm alliterating a lot here. Fortified foods with folate. That then can block the folate pathways, and that's going to interact with it as well. So I don't know what the answer is at the end of the day. The answer is we treat individuals.
Yes.
And there are many factors to look at. I can't say, yes, creatine is something that everyone should take.
No.
It's too simplistic.
Absolutely, yeah. And even to say, it's something that will help all perimenopausal or menopausal women. Too simplistic. It's something that will help all athletes and all bodybuilders. Also, way too simplistic. So I hope, and I think we've achieved this, Julie, I hope that today we have laid out enough of the nuance and translated it into practical terms, whether it's assessing vegetarian vegan status, whether it's assessing, your actual symptoms that could be hinting at a creatine deficit, whether it's assessing your hormonal status based on where you are in life and your biological sex, whether it's assessing your intake of those B vitamins, whether you have some blood tests that have measured your homocysteine levels, whether you've had the gene testing done on your MTHFR variants. I hope we've added enough of those layers of nuance in for people to go, oh, okay, let me piece these things together and make an informed decision about whether this supplement could benefit me. Take it a step further and go, this is a lot of information to tackle and sort of synthesize and analyze on my own. Maybe if I am having genuine health concerns that I would really love to see some improvement in or get to the bottom of, it could be really worthwhile investing in a practitioner to help you decode this stuff so you don't have to like translate all this health research on your own, because who's got time for that? And it's a lot. And I mean, I think you would generate a creatine deficit just from how much frontal lobe activity you have to you have to partake in to analyze the nuance of all this data. So lean on us,
Yeah.
ask us for support.
Yeah. And also, if somebody was to use Chatty or AI to ask some of these questions, because of the way that AI is changing the information that we're getting, it's now leaning more heavily on the large websites. So they tend to be more allopathic, and you're not necessarily going to get this nuance. So,
Yep.
We had to work hard diving into the research to get these points.
Yeah.
And so it's just another point of get a person that can synthesize the information for you in your specific circumstances.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'll also shout out that Julie is going to be posting a bit more of a specific deep dive blog on her website that will be delving into and untangling some of the concepts that we touched on today. It's going to be explaining it in a lot more depth and with a lot more specificity to perimenopausal and postmenopausal women, which I think is going to be really interesting and helpful. And I feel like they're a demographic that, a lot of supplements get targeted at them, because that's such a huge stage of life where symptoms are coming up for the first time, or the symptoms are coming up in such a way that is so detrimental to quality of life that these women are really desperate for help, for answers, for relief. So that's going to be a really good blog. And when that is live, you'll be able to find that in the show notes or description based on where you're watching. Yeah. And speaking of you listening and watching, if you like what we have to put out there, if you like this kind of deep dive into, myth busting about a supplement, myth busting a health craze, we would love if you could subscribe on YouTube or Apple Podcasts, or follow us on Spotify. Consider leaving us a review if you love what we have to say, if you love our style of naturopathy and presenting health advice. It really helps the podcast grow. It helps more people get the answers and information that we are so happy and excited to share. And as always, we are very open to receiving episode requests from you guys. So you can reach out to us on Instagram.
Or questions.
Yes. If there's any questions from an episode that you've listened to, or anything you want to hear us discuss or further extrapolate via a nuanced route, reach out to us on Instagram. We're at the.nuanced.naturopaths. And you'll also find a link below to just send us an email with any questions or requests that you might have.
Fabulous.
Cool. Thanks for supporting the show, and we will catch you in the next one.
Yes. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Nuanced Naturopaths. Be sure to ask us any questions you have below, engage with the polls, and we'll catch you in the next one.